welcome to Palace Confidential. This is the weekly programme dedicated to all things royal, recorded just a stone's throw from Kensington Palace. I'm your host, Jo Elvin, and joining me this week is historian Guy Walters, journalist and author Yasmin Alibhai-Brown, and Daily Mail diarist Richard Eden. Welcome and thank you for being here today. What have we got for you on today's show? Well, with Prince William taking to the Baftas stage to talk about diversity, we ask, when is it acceptable for the royals to speak out? And now that Harry and Meghan have hot-footed to Canada, we asked you, who should step into the gap left behind? And don't we all love a wedding? As more details of Princess Beatrice's wedding are teased, we discuss whether the upcoming nuptials will finally bring harmony to that royal household. Well, this week, of course, began with the glitz and glamour of the Baftas, while the Duchess of Cambridge was one of the very few attendees to attempt the sustainable dressing code. Prince William made headlines by challenging BAFTA on their diversity record, after no actors of colour or female directors were nominated for the top awards. This intervention did inevitably draw complaints that the Prince was, sort of interfering where he shouldn't. It's a subject that Richard Eden has been looking at closer.
Prince William's intervention on diversity at the BAFTA Awards this week reignited a familiar debate about the royals sticking their oar into political waters. But he's not the first and probably won't be the last. His ancestor, Prince Albert, husband of Queen Victoria, whose memorial stands behind me, spoke out against slavery and child labour and helped end the practice of duelling between army officers. It's said that the stability of the British government is based on the fact that the monarch has remained politically neutral as head of state, but that hasn't stopped other family members from airing their views. Friend of the royals, Basher Briggs, thinks the family should follow the path set by the Queen.
They should remain completely politically neutral and just set an example the way the Queen does. She never expresses an opinion. Of course, she has plenty to say and think, but she never expresses an opinion, and neither did the Queen Mother.
Prince Charles has often been outspoken, preaching the horrors of plastics or of various modern architectural schemes. This came into the spotlight when it emerged that he had made direct policy demands to the then Prime Minister Tony Blair in what became known as the Black Spider memos. The Prince demanded everything from urgent action to improve equipment for troops fighting in Iraq, to the availability of alternative herbal medicines in the UK. Responding to critics, Charles insisted he will not meddle in politics when he becomes king. The royals have often been on safer waters when discussing humanitarian issues, but by wading into the area of diversity, William raised heckles in some quarters. However, senior royal watcher Hugo Vickers thinks he did the right thing.
I think Prince William had every right to speak up at the Baftas. He is, after all, president of the Baftas, and if he has something on his mind, he should say so. He is, in a sense, speaking on behalf of them. And he's raising an issue. People don't have to listen to him if they don't want to, but he has absolutely every right to say it.
In an interview in 2017, William told of his frustrations at being unable to speak out and said there were things that he felt he'd be able to help with. After dipping his toe in the water on Sunday, it's likely we'll see him wade in further in the future.
So who wants to go first? Was Prince William right to say something about diversity at the Baftas? What do we think?
Well, why would it be controversial? When did equality and diversity become a problematic thing? It's surely uncontroversial.
Well, I think playing devil's advocate, I guess, because it is something of a political...
It isn't. It's fairness.
Intervention.
It's fairness. It's about fairness. Are we saying only men have the right?
No, I think that what he said was perfectly reasonable. It's fine. I don't argue with you there, Yasmin. Where I argue with you is it's not his role to make these points. The royal family are simply there to play roles. They're window dressing for the nation. They're not there to get involved in the dirty cultural politics and questions of diversity. I just think you're absolutely wrong.
No.
The fact we're arguing about it shows that he shouldn't be talking about it. The Queen has set a wonderful example by...
Richard, sorry to interrupt, but maybe the fact that we're arguing means that this is a very, very important point that needs... And it touches a nerve, particularly with, dare I say it, white people. That we don't want, it's sort of like, it's laundry that we're uncomfortable with. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with what Prince William said at all. There's lots of good points for that. But It's whether he should do it at all. And I just think the royals are there to look good, avoid controversy.
You two men are so conservative. Oh my God, you're so conservative. Get with it. Come with the kids. Down with the kids.
I'm not.
But
listen,
I mean, it just depends on their views. Don't you think there just comes a point where, because they are supposed to be neutral, it's like it's all right as long as Prince William's saying something that you politically agree with?
No, this isn't about supporting the Conservative Party or talking about Brexit. All these hot political subjects, I completely get your point. Diversity is a human change that is happening the world over, and he just thinks BAFTA should be part of it.
And
nothing wrong there.
What do you say to the critics who are saying, well, I mean, I've been to Buckingham Palace a few times. It's kind of children of the corn in there with, the staff. It's all very... There's not much diversity there. Do you not think that William should be looking at his own house first?
Well, no, I think, I'm not a royalist. I'm a Republican. I'd really not have any of them taking our money and sitting on our heads, but that's my point of view.
You're on the right show, Yasmin.
Absolutely. But what I do think is the younger ones are supposed to be speaking to generations where these things are fundamental to, the future, the modernity, whatever. That's what they're meant to be doing, and I'm glad he's doing it.
But Yasmin, what about the timing? I mean, it's awful. Just when the most prominent mixed-race member of the royal family has left, saying publicly that she was made to feel unwelcome. And then you've got Prince William, preaching about diversity. This is crazy.
I think that's a really good point, because I think, things needed to be said at the time about what was happening. But Queen Victoria, people forget, she was a proper anti-racist. She used to use those words to her courtiers and sometimes about the nation, because when she was very fond of her Abdul Karim, her Indian servant, and other Indian servants, she trusted them with her babies, and there was a hue and cry about it. She came out. So there is a tradition here.
I take your point, Yasmin. I think you're right. Diversity is one of those issues in which surely there should be no disagreement, so therefore there should be no controversy, such as also the environment. But I think that there's also an understanding, I think, that what we subjects, and even you're a subject, I'm afraid, Yasmin, despite sending back your MBE, despite that, I think there's almost a sort of tacit acceptance of what the royals can talk about and what they can't talk about. And I think that on this issue, it started to feel like, well, maybe William's pushing it, and maybe he needs to push it, in your view, to that level.
Isn't this just progress? I mean, I remember a time when Prince Charles was criticised for, what were they called, the spider memos or something, for lots of environmental issues that now we look back on and realise he was quite ahead of his time in some of his thinking.
Yes, he was ahead of his time in his thinking.
Isn't it just a natural progression that the monarchy would become more modern and more political?
He was ahead of his time on his thinking, and of course it was very controversial at the time. So Yasmin could easily draw a parallel to what I was saying, and that. He's also fantastically wrong about other things he speaks about, like homeopathy. And I know that if I start laying into homeopathy, I'm going to get a million mad spidery emails in my inbox. Some of which might be from the Prince of Wales. But certainly he's wrong on some things, and so I think it's very difficult to work out. Well, he wants to speak about X and Y. It's OK to do Y but not X. Who decides that? And this is my problem. Is it decided in rooms like this? Is it decided, in the palaces of the mighty by courtiers? Or is there a kind of tacit acceptance amongst the public about what's acceptable to talk about and what not to talk about?
Why do people carry on as if the rivers will be running red and the sun will fall from the sky if the royals voice an opinion? Where does that come from?
Because it's divisive. It's the Queen, and as Basha Briggs said in that video, she was a friend of the Queen Mother, and both of them, they've set that example of maintaining the loyalty of all their subjects by not intervening. And I've heard people say, oh yeah, the Queen's a socialist, and others will say, actually the Queen's really right wing. No one knows, and that's great. But when Prince Charles takes the throne, we'll know a lot of his views about a lot of subjects, and in Prince William's case, we might know even more.
I'm sorry, I take completely the opposite view. They're being given pots, piles, cases, roomfuls of money. Absolutely to stand and wear frocks and suits?
I mean, as an Australian, I'm not a Republican, but as an Australian, I sometimes take that for
granted. Then just let's have cardboard cutouts. I mean, if they can't speak, it'll be cheaper.
I think Yasmin, we were discussing earlier that maybe you should be a member of the royal family briefly. You had this idea, didn't you?
I think we should have two people every 5 years should be able to apply to be part of the royal circus. And then it might begin to be more interesting.
It's an interesting idea. The pantomime I saw in London before Christmas.
This could be Simon Cowell's new X Factor franchise.
Joanna Lumley could become part of the royals. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, I think you should become a duchess, Yasmin, and you might not want to. You might want to have back your MBE, but I might nod my head to you. I'd doff my cap.
But imagine,
to you.
we could end up with President Blair, President Corbyn. I mean, heaven help us.
But you had President Mary Robinson in Ireland. You'd have good people who were elected and who were excellent at the job, but that's a different issue.
Well,
what I'm saying
how's
is,
that working
as
out?
an anti-royalist, I think if they are going to be relevant, at least they should take a position on the environment, on diversity, which should not be disputed.
The problem is when your issues become irrelevant or they look like quackery, it then makes you look a fool. And I think that it's easier just to step back, say nothing and get on with it. And that's basically what the Queen's done.
Quiet and boring.
Yeah.
And then everyone will be happy.
Let me say, I don't think the Queen has been that neutral.
I think we need to wrap up there. This is for another time, this one, but that was fascinating. And as ever, it's not just our opinions that count, and as you can see, we've got lots of them. We wanted to know what your thoughts are, so we're better than the Palace of Westminster to hear the voices of the people.
No, I think they shouldn't.
I think that they have their own right to anything that they want to do. So if they would like to be more involved in politics, then it's a good idea.
Personally, I don't think that they should involve themselves in politics.
See why not? They're leaders of the country, albeit not political leaders of the country, and I think that people listen to what they have to say.
No, I think they should be kept separate.
Her Majesty the Queen has always been absolutely wonderful. She's served the country devotedly and with huge dedication, and she has never, ever involved herself in politics.
Well, with all those opinionated royals, there should be plenty to step into the spotlight now that Harry and Meghan have moved away. Yes, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been stripped of all official duties, and so there is a gap to be filled, not to mention, how should we put it politely, with Andrew stepping back. So, Richard, who do you think could step up for Team Sussex and replace them in the royal spotlight?
I mean, it's going to be a hard act. I'm a big fan of Harry and Meghan, as you can see by my choice of
you dived on that when we walked in, yeah.
But I think that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie should have a public role. At the moment, they don't carry out public duties.
Am I supposed to be neutral? Because I just sort of did a deflated
No, they're great women, and
they are.
Look, they
don't have the same stardust.
They've never put a foot wrong. While other cousins of theirs, who shall remain nameless, were falling out of nightclubs, playing strip poker in LA,
selling milk,
and dressing up as Nazis. They happily went to university, got their heads down, and have done very well. So I think they could easily fill that role in terms of carrying out public duties.
Do you think they would bring the same crowds with the bunting to, High Street Kensington, outside Kensington Palace?
No, I don't think they would, and I think maybe the Wessexes should get more involved. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're pretty boring as well, aren't they? Let's face it.
Well, she's supposedly the Queen's favourite daughter-in-law.
Well, she's very hard-working.
Yeah,
I'm boring enough to look at the Times registry pages in which it reports what's gone on, the previous day, in the royal family. And actually, you notice that those two are working harder, probably, and Princess Anne are working harder than the rest of them. Maybe their kids are a bit older, but they seem to be getting on with it. And not a day goes past without Sophie Wessex going to some sort of meat packing plant in the West Midlands. I mean, she's really getting her hands dirty.
Living that dream.
Living the dream. Yeah.
Who's the fun one for you, Yasmin? Who would you like to see?
Just think, what an infantilized
You still voted for the cardboard.
society this is. What an infantilized society that you're scrabbling around to find these kids or young women who are connected. What? Is their blood different from mine? What is this about? OK, I respect the Queen because she's been through an extraordinary span of history. You can't take that away. But really? Really?
Yasmin,
why not the corgis?
Yasmin, you may not like it.
Why not the corgis become ambassadors?
Yasmin, you may not like it, but there are millions of people in this country who do. When the Earl of Wessex came to open the new primary school in our village, all the people in the village and the children and the teachers and the parents were all absolutely thrilled and delighted by it.
I'm not, trying to be polite, but what else is going on there? Is that actually
that's
about...
a low blow.
No, but
I literally have no idea what you're talking about. We're very happy
if I lived in a tiny village, I would be really, and a royal turned up. It could be...
People in tiny villages aren't hicks.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they're tiny villages, not a lot goes on.
It just is a very, very kind of important question to ask. Are we saying that the people in this clan have some special inborn qualities which enable them to lord it over us, and we must curtsy to them, whoever they are? I mean, this whole Andrew story isn't going to go away. How long before we start asking the question, you know, did he really think he was above it all because he is part of the British royal family? These are really important questions.
I think that's a slightly discrete issue as to your first point, to be fair.
But they are a royal family, you know, they are, we can relate to them, they're down the years, we mark our history by the royal anniversaries.
I mean, they do bring money into the country, Yasmin, you do accept that, don't you?
Do you know, even that is disputed, but weddings they do, when you have the big weddings and the souvenirs. But I think it's still very important for a modern 21st century country to say, what is this dependency on a family? Why can't we break free? Let's have the Queen, and I think, as I've said, but the Queen Mother, her views were intolerable.
Yes, but she never made them public.
They were at times leaked to the press.
Would leak them.
No, so don't tell me that they have been these immaculate people. They haven't. And I go back to Diana. The only time I did become a bit of a royalist was when Diana was around, because I thought she was extraordinary.
Because she was subversive.
Yes, and I love that, don't I? Don't I? And the way she was treated by them, doesn't that count?
We are trying to talk about who's going to replace these people.
The thing is, people are excited by the royals. You might not like it, you might disagree with that, but people are. And who is there who is going to match or even surpass the excitement that Harry and Meghan clearly gave to people? I mean, bless William and Kate, but I don't think even they have the popularity.
OK, well, how about Victoria Beckham, the woman who made your trousers? Maybe we should have her.
Yeah, Princess Victoria.
Princess Victoria,
I don't think you'd find any argument from her.
She's posh enough already. Imagine how big her head would be.
Well, I mean, let's hear what the people have got to say. We've heard the panel's views. Let's hear from some of the Queen's loyal subjects about this very matter.
I don't think anyone should replace them, really.
No, of course they shouldn't.
I don't think it'll make much of a difference because I think the royal family are already doing a good job in representing the UK.
Sure, why not have someone else, you know, step into their shoes to do the things that they were supposed to do as the Duke and Duchess, and have, like, maybe Princess Beatrice come in and take some of the more ceremonial roles or whatnot.
No, I don't think so. No.
No, I don't think someone else should take their role as such, but I think it's disappointing the way they behaved and treated the Queen.
Well, with the Queen having 8 grandchildren, it's no surprise that the last few years have seen a fair few royal weddings. And after an eventful start of the year for the Windsors, the upcoming nuptials of Princess Beatrice and her fiancé Edo may be the happy occasion the family and possibly the country needs. After all, what's better than a wedding to bring the family together? You excited, Guy?
No, I'm not excited. I couldn't give a damn about that. The only thing I know about Princess Beatrice...
she's going to be heartbroken to hear that.
Well, we share a birthday, 8th of the 8th, so we're both very lucky people, according to, you know, people in China.
OK.
And, but other than that...
Well, that bodes well for the wedding.
It does, and hopefully everything else. But I have no idea who she's getting married to. I mean, I know he's Italian.
Foreigner.
Yes,
not another one.
And I really couldn't give a monkeys about it. And I don't think anybody else on this planet gives a monkeys about it.
Well, I do think that the father of the bride, Richard, may bring some, you know, unexpected interest to the whole proceedings. What do you think? Do you think he will be sort of like dusted off and brought back into polite society by walking her up the aisle?
I think certainly he'll have a key role, yes. He'll be walking her up the aisle, and it'll be a lovely day. I've revealed...
You're looking forward to it?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Why haven't you been knighted yet?
It should be live on TV, you know. No, I wrote on Saturday about how the Queen's going to be hosting the reception in Buckingham Palace, and it will be a sort of garden party, really, with
and a Friday wedding, I believe.
That's what they're saying is going on a Friday.
Which is already, for me, a Friday wedding already says a bit more low-key.
No, but Friday weddings are much more posh, because they always were. If you got married in London and you were grand...
See, I'm showing my Aussiness again now.
It's a real problem. And so you would get married on a Friday and you'd wear your morning suit, because you would get married on a Friday morning. You would have your wedding breakfast at lunchtime. Yasmin knows all this. You could have asked her this. And then you'd all go off to the country in the afternoon.
Oh,
you would stick
of
around.
course.
You see, that's
Yeah.
how people like us live, Jo.
In your small villages.
Exactly right.
But I do
With
want
royalty
to,
coming in gangs.
I do want to bring up the father of the bride. I mean, he's already, with all these things hanging over him, which are allegations, I completely accept. But the relationship with the American paedophile is not an allegation. How quickly was he taken by his mummy to church? I mean, I was really appalled by that, really appalled.
Yeah, but I'm sure if your son denied
No, I
allegations
wouldn't do
like
it.
he has, that she would take
I
his
would
word
not,
for it.
No, I would not publicly take him to church. I would not. Actually, let him be in the background for a little while.
I think that's a really difficult one to say
And she's filled his
how
chest
you would
with.
behave.
She's his
in that.
favourite. He's his favourite, I hear.
Yeah.
And every year she's given him so many medals for what? For what?
But what's happened to innocent until proved guilty? I mean, the man hasn't even been
Keep him in the background. Look.
accused of anything yet. The
No,
FBI
but
just want to
But
talk to him
Richard,
as a witness.
be that as it may, I imagine that it's going to be quite a moment of turmoil for Beatrice because, like it or not, he's going to be a bit of an upstaging presence at that wedding for these very reasons.
Yeah, poor Beatrice. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously you don't want that sort of thing overshadowing your wedding, and perhaps that's why it will be more low-key than her sister Eugenie's wedding, which was
And
the
it's not
big
being televised, I
wedding.
believe?
Probably not,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
But, I mean, certainly...
But the allegations, I completely agree with you, but he was out there seen with Epstein after everybody knew what Epstein had done. What kind of judgment is that?
No, well, I think he's admitted himself that was
Well, we were talking about this
yeah.
last week on the show, weren't we? It's this is not going away without being resolved in a clean way, and it would be nice to think that it could be before this poor woman's wedding. If he could.
I think that was always the hope. They hoped
Yeah.
that Prince Andrew would be sort of rehabilitated almost by the time of the wedding, but it doesn't look like that will be the case, really.
But that was
which is a
wishful
shame.
thinking. I mean, they might as well
Yeah.
just have the reception at Peak Street Express in Woking and be done with it. I think you can get 2 for 1 at the moment, so you could probably, just save a bit of cash that way.
Yeah. Easy catering.
Easy catering, what's not to like? And it looked suitably doghousey enough for Yasmin.
Do you know what? I would respect them so much if they did actually do that. It was
It's fantastic, wasn't it?
bit of
Who had the dough balls?
Yeah.
You're upsetting him. Look.
Now, we mentioned it before, but I mean, obviously, Yasmin, this could be a bit of an economy boost. People, I know you won't be out there celebrating,
I don't think so.
but I think
this is just make believe. Nobody even knows the names of these 2 girls.
I just don't think
And I
that's
don't
true.
know.
I think
They don't
if
know
you've
the
got
name.
Peter Phillips able to sell milk in China, surely these are famous princesses.
Oh, and
They
they've got
are
so many.
not.
They've got so many famous friends. There'll be Ed Sheeran,
Well, quite.
James Blunt,
That's
Ellie
different.
Goulding.
That's different. The famous friends might do it, but not these 2
When
girls.
Prince Andrew married Fergie, I was standing on the Mall waving a flag with some Canadian friends who'd come over. So
It's just so easy to picture, isn't it?
Words I never thought I'd say. I'm with Yasmin on this one.
Yes.
Put it there.
We don't like consensus on this show.
I couldn't give about it at all. As I say, I barely know their names. I don't know how to pronounce
They're
Eugenie's
interchangeable
name.
often.
Yeah, I have no idea about it.
The thing is, though, I'm quite like you. I'm always a bit of a royal wedding refusenik until the day, and then I'm crying and discussing
Everyone
the
loves a
dress the
good
next
wedding,
day with
don't they?
everybody.
We did have a royal wedding party when Kate and William got hitched, and there was a bit of irony to it. But it was also the same weekend that Osama bin Laden got assassinated, executed, wherever he was killed. So it was kind of a double bubble celebration.
Yeah, which
so
one
perhaps if the royals
which
could
had
chuck
the better
in
turnout at the street party?
Exactly. If the royals could chuck in some sort of spectacular takedown, that might happen.
Can I also remind us of how many of these grand weddings have ended in divorce?
Well, that's
It's a
really
very-
cheery
How
note.
many have? I'd like the
remember.
answer to that
Just
question. I don't know
remember.
off the top of my head. So like Andrew,
Anne.
Charles, Anne.
Only the youngest
3
one
out of
has
4,
stayed married.
But that's just being a human, isn't it?
No.
Yeah.
No, I think there's something. This is a dysfunctional family. Sorry.
Divorce rates are up
Yeah, is that
everywhere.
higher than the national average? I'm not sure.
3 out of
3 out of
is
4
quite big,
is
yeah.
quite high. It's quite high.
It's quite high. I blame the parents.
But maybe that means that the Queen and the royal
And
family
then
understand
Margaret.
modern Britain better.
And then Margaret, and on and on it went.
Yeah, but let's wish them luck.
Absolutely.
Like, let's,
Yeah, I don't want to rain cynicism on young love.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't.
Hope
may not
springs eternal
really care
and all
very
of
much,
that.
so I'm not going to wish them ill.
No, but go away, have your wedding. Let Papa pay for it. That's it.
I think on that note, I don't know what else to say to that. And that is all we have time for on Palace Confidential this week. It's been quite an enjoyable rollercoaster. Thank you so much to my guests, Yasmin, Richard and Guy, and we will see you next week.